All right, Scarlet Letter group. Time for chapters 3 and 4 of the Scarlet Letter. When we left in chapter 2, Hester Prynne is standing on top of the scaffold, and she's noticed somebody, a stranger in the crowd, who has made her frightened, who has made her fearful. And she is desperately clutching this child to her now. We look on page 57, at the top of 57. It says she clutches the child so close to her that the child utters a cry of pain, and she doesn't even notice. Well, let me tell you, a mom notices when her child cries, unless she is extremely fearful. And Hester is. Whoever this man in the crowd is, whoever this man that she happened to lay her eyes upon is, he has frightened her. And we goes on in 57, and it says, very soon, however, she's noticing him, and he's noticing her. They're looking at each other from across the town. And it says, his look became keen and penetrable. A writhing horror twisted itself across his features and made one little pause in all its wreathed involutions and open sight. His face awakened with some powerful emotion. What's the word powerful emotion? Which nevertheless he instantaneously controlled by an effort of a will. What emotion do you think he's having? It's a strong emotion. Hawthorne uses some strong language to describe that emotion. Again, look at page 57 of your text. What do you notice? What is he saying? Okay, so describe to your amongst your group what emotion you think this stranger is having currently. Are you back? All right. At the bottom of the paragraph, then, we note that as she's looking at him and he's looking at her, he does one singular movement. It says, he found the eyes of Hester Prynne fastened on him, and saw she appeared to recognize him. He slowly and calmly raised his finger and made a gesture with it in the air and laid it on his lips. He's telling her to be quiet. This tells us something. Why would this stranger in the crowd want Hester Prynne to remain quiet? What is it about him that he's like, shh? She's scared of him. He wants her to remain quiet. What pictures are you getting in your head about who this man is? Now, on the top of page 58, he goes on to describe he goes on to ask a fellow man in the town about Hester, and he's like, oh, man, you must be from a long ways away if you don't know the story of Hester Prynne, and how her husband sent her across the seas here, and he stayed back because he had some business to attend to, but he sent her ahead to set everything up. Well, it may have been a few years, but and his young wife, look you, being left to her own misguidance. The very bottom of, I'm in the middle of page 58 at the bottom of the paragraph. Misguidance. He sent her alone here, and well, he did it in good faith, and we're not sure what happened to him. This has been years. But when left to her own misguidance, look what trouble she found herself in. When we leave a woman alone, look what trouble they can find themselves in. Aha! I conceive you, the stranger said with a smile. So a learned man, as you speak of, should have learned this too in his book. And who, by your favor, may be the father of the yonder babe? So this gentleman wants to know who fathered this child that Hester Prynne is holding. And he says, nobody knows. She won't say. She hasn't said a word. We've been trying to get it out of her. The pastors have been trying to get it out of her, and she keeps it all a secret. Now it says on 59, the penalty of adultery is death. But Mistress Prynne, she has to stand only in a space of 3 hours on the platform of the pillory, and then thereafter, for the remainder of her natural life, wear a mark of shame upon her bosom. This is what this man from the village is telling our stranger. And the stranger says, a wise sentence. Thus she be a living sermon against sin until the ignominious letter be engraved upon her tombstone. It irks me Nevertheless, that the partner of her iniquity should not be at least made to stand on the scaffold beside her. But he will be known. He will be known. He will be known. Why does this guy care? Talk amongst yourselves in your discussion group for a minute and discuss why he has such a strong reaction to whether or not Hester names the father of her child. Why would this stranger care? Hit pause and mark it in your group for a little bit. Back. Okay. Well, let's move on. Now, as it goes on, they start talking to Hester Prynne, and they want her to name the man. The main pastor says, "You know what? You got to say his name." And he even entreats Pastor Dimsdale. He's like, "Please, Reverend Dimsdale, get her to name the man who is the father of her child." And it says, they describe Reverend Dimsdale as a pale young man. And he says, "I have sought, I say, to persuade this godly youth that he should deal with you." This is the other pastor talking. And he says, "Knowing your natural temper better than I." He's talking about Arthur Dimsdale. He's talking to Hester. He says, he could be the better judge of what arguments. He opposes to me with a young man's oversoftness, albeit wise beyond his years. They were wronging the very nature of a woman to lay open her heart's secret in such broad daylight. So Arthur Dimsdale is saying, hey, I protect Hester here. We can't make her lay open her heart. What does that mean? Lay open her heart. Talk a minute amongst yourselves and decide, what does it mean for a woman to lay open her heart? Are you back? So what did they think? What was the issue with a woman laying open her heart? Why would that be such a big deal? And why is Arthur Dimsdale one that is so concerned with her ability to protect it? Okay. But Arthur Dimsdale goes on, and on page 63, I love that paragraph, and I want you to read it amongst yourself. In the middle of it, though, he talks about, "Be not silent from any mistaken pity and tenderness for him. For believe me, Hester, though he were to step down from a high place and stand there beside thee on thy pedal of shame, yet better were it so than to hide a guilty heart through life." He said, don't make him add hypocrisy to his sin. Why do you think he is saying this? What possible role could he have in this story that makes him say, hey, name the guy Hester, so that he does not have to live with hypocrisy added to his list of sins, along with adultery? You're no good to protect him. You need to say his name. What do you think? Read that paragraph and talk in your groups. Back. Well, notice if you go down the page, then it talks even about the baby noticing something about Arthur Dimsdale. Now, the village loves Arthur. Absolutely loves him. They think he is the greatest pastor ever. And this babe, even the poor babe at Hester's bosom, was affected by the same influence. For it directed its heretofore vacant gaze toward Mr. Dimsdale, and held up its little arms, half pleased and half plaintive murmur. So even this child is showing, hey, I recognize this guy. Why would this child recognize this man? What is it about this man? Discuss in your groups. You back? Well, she goes on to say then, on page 64, It is too deeply branded. Now remember, the women wanted to brand her forehead with the letter A. If they couldn't kill her, let's at least brand her. She says, it is too deeply branded. Ye cannot take it off. And would that I might endure his agony as well as mine. And she said, I will not speak, answered Hester, turning pale as death, but responding to this voice, which she too, T-O-O, surely recognized. And my child must seek a heavenly father. She shall never know an earthly one. Mr. Dimmesdale, leaning over the balcony with his hand upon his heart, wondrous strength and generosity of this woman's heart, she will not speak. Why is she so determined to protect this man? Discuss that. Why is this so important to her heart? It is branded in her heart. Is it because she hates him or because she loves him? Pause. I dare say it's because she loves him. She loves him more than she loves her life herself. And she believes firmly she is protecting this man. And Arthur Dimmesdale is in awe that she would be so protective of him. You figuring it out yet? I hope so. All right, in chapter 4 then it's entitled The Interview. And in chapter 4 we realize who Roger Chillingsworth is. He parades around as a doctor, a Christian doctor. Is he? Pay attention to Roger Chillingsworth and his effect that he has on those around him throughout the story. Now, in the prison, when he first interviews Hester Prynne, she is, at the beginning of the chapter, she is all beside herself, and they're worried she is going to kill herself and her child. And so they send for a doctor, and Roger Chillingsworth happens to come in, and we find out who he is. Did you catch it in the reading? What do you think? Yes, he is her husband, her long-lost husband from across the way. And she worries that he is... Pause for a minute, so I hope I catch this right back up. All right, so we realize Roger Chillingsworth has come, and at first Hester's kind of worried that he will kill her child. She said on page 67, wouldst thou avenge thyself on an innocent babe? And he says, why? What should ail me to harm this misbegotten and miserable babe? The medicine is potent for good. And if it were my child, yea, mine as well as thine. So if this child was ours, like it should be between a husband and a wife, I could care no better for it. So he's trying to reassure her that, yes, he's her husband, and yes, he knows that she's fooled around, but he's not going to hurt the baby. And then he offers her a drink to help calm her nerves. And she says, I've often thought of death, and I'm on page 68. I've often thought of death, but she said, I don't want to be poisoned. And he tells her, even if I had imagined a scheme of vengeance, what could I do better for my object than to let thee live? Than to give thee medicines against all harm and peril of life. Live, therefore, and bear about thy doom with thee in the eyes of men and women. He's telling her the worst punishment I can give you is to make you live, and you're going to have to live with this suffering and this shame that's going to be brought upon you from the whole village for the rest of your life. Killing you is too nice. I'm going to make you live and suffer. So, and then we learn a little bit about their history, and I want you to discuss their history. Who is Roger Chillingsworth in comparison to Hester Prynne? What are their differences? What are their similarities? Why does he blame himself in part for Hester Prynne's adultery? Go ahead and discuss. He says, then we have wronged each other. Mine was the first wrong, because I betrayed your budding youth. What does he mean by that? Go ahead and explain that, Maddie. Please put that down before it falls and breaks. And he asks her then, who is the dad? And she's like, I'm not going to say. I'm not going to say. And what secret? I want you to discuss what secret he asks Hester Prynne to keep for him in the community. And then ask yourselves, why does he want to keep this secret? All right, that is all I have for chapter 5. I'm running out of time, so we'll see you tomorrow.